My name is Isabel. You can call me Izzy. I'm 25, and I'm a software developer. I'm the one who always has a plan. I'm the responsible one, the one who saves, who budgets every dollar, who doesn't need bailing out. I've built my life that way. I'm at my parents' house, crammed around the dining room table. It's loud, celebratory. My older brother, Mark, just got engaged. People are laughing, glasses are clinking. It's a perfect family moment. Then, my mother, Janet, stands up. She's beaming. She raises her glass for a toast. "And we're just so thrilled," she announces, her voice projecting to the entire room, "that Izzy will be happy to cover their high-end wedding venue as a family contribution." The laughter cuts off. The clinking stops. My stomach drops. It feels like the air has been punched out of my lungs. Heat flashes up my neck. My ears burning. Every muscle in my body locks. It wasn't an announcement, it was a verdict. All eyes are on me. Mark is smiling. His fiancée is glowing. I just stare at my mother. My voice comes out quiet, ice cold. "What money?" The silence is deafening. "What are you talking about?" The smile on her face didn't fade. It just froze. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an ask. It was an expectation. When did my future become their checking account? If you've ever been the responsible one, you know exactly what I'm feeling. Stick around. That money, my mother, Janet, was so generously giving away? It was $50,000. 1,000,000. It was my entire college fund. This wasn't some joint account. It wasn't family money. It was a gift given to me by my grandparents when I graduated high school 6 years ago. I can still feel the stiff paper of the bank book they gave me. I remember sitting at their kitchen table, the smell of my grandmother's coffee in the air. My grandfather, his voice firm, looked me right in the eye. "This is for your future, Isabel," he said. "Not for anyone else's. This is your start. My start." And I guarded it. I planned my entire life around it. I worked my ass off to get scholarships so I wouldn't have to touch the principal. I got my degree in computer science. I worked 2 part-time jobs while I was in school, coding until 3 a.m., living on instant noodles and cheap coffee. I landed a good job as a developer. I did everything right. I budgeted every single penny. I drove a 10-year-old car. I bought my clothes at thrift stores. I did all of this, knowing that $50,000 was my safety net. It was my down payment on a house. It was my I can quit a toxic job fund. It was my future, sitting safe and secure, earning interest. It was the one thing in my life that was completely, totally, unequivocally mine. My brother, Mark, he's different. He's Ving Twit. He's my parents' passion project. He never had a plan. He just had ideas. And my parents, especially my mother, funded every single one. When I needed a new laptop for my advanced coding classes, I had to present a 5-page report on ROI. When Mark decided he wanted to be a travel vlogger, my parents bought him a $4,000 camera setup. He's not a bad person. He's just soft. He's never faced a single consequence. He's never heard the word no. While I was building a career, he was finding himself. His latest brilliant idea, about a year ago, was a craft beer truck. Oh, my parents were so proud. "Mark is an entrepreneur," my mother would gush at family dinners. "He has such a vision." They co-signed for the truck. They gave him thousands for equipment, for licensing, for inventory. They were all in. I remember that truck. I'd see it every time I visited my parents. It was just parked in their driveway, permanently. It was this big, clumsy, second-hand delivery van that he'd tried to paint himself. The logo was already peeling. It had a smell. Even from 10 feet away, you could smell it. It was this sour, damp smell of stale yeast from a bad batch, mixed with the sharp, chemical smell of cheap pine cleaner. It was the smell of failure. The tires were always a little flat, resting in the same 2 divots in the asphalt. It never moved, not once. It was just a $30,000 lawn ornament, rusting in the driveway. A monument to my brother's broken dreams and my parents' blind enabling. And I was the only one who seemed to see it. Predictably, about 6 months ago, the craft beer truck business failed. Failed is a gentle word. it completely imploded. It turns out my brother, Mark, hadn't just been bad with money. He had been reckless on a level I couldn't even comprehend. He hadn't just lost our parents' investment. He was left with massive, crushing debts. We all knew he was in trouble. My parents' house, which used to be so full of loud fake praise for him, became quiet, tense. My mother, Janet, stopped bringing him up in conversation. My father just looked tired. I assumed he owed money to suppliers. Maybe he owed the bank for the truck loan. I was so naive. What I didn't know, what they deliberately hid from me for months, was the kind of debt he was in. My brother hadn't just gone to a bank. When the bank said no, he went to someone else. Mark, the golden child, the entrepreneur, owed a significant amount of money to loan sharks. The panic, my mother later described, wasn't just financial stress, it was fear. I can picture it now. The late-night phone calls, the hushed, terrified arguments in their kitchen after I'd gone home. My father, pacing the floor. My mother, hysterical, crying about what those men might do. They were terrified for their son. The son they had raised to be this useless, irresponsible man-child. The son who had never faced a single real-world problem. And in their panic, they looked for a solution. They didn't sell their own assets. They didn't cash in their retirement funds. They didn't tell Mark to sell the truck for scrap and get a job. No, they looked for the easiest, quietest pile of money they could find. They looked for mine. So, 5 months ago, while I was at my desk coding, while I was meticulously moving $200 into my savings, my parents sat down at their computer. They went into my account. The one my grandparents had set up. The one they were supposed to be protecting. They didn't just take some of it. They didn't borrow a few thousand. They drained it. All $50,000. Click. Transfer. Gone. Every single cent of my future, my safety net, my hard-earned security, gone. They took the money I had saved for a home and used it to pay off a criminal's ledger. They sacrificed my entire future, the one I had built so carefully, to erase my brother's catastrophic, dangerous failure. And then, they just went on with their lives. They kept having me over for dinner. They kept asking me how my job was. My mother kept telling me to find a nice man and settle down. All while knowing they had hollowed out my life. How do you do that? How do you look your daughter in the eye for 5 straight months, smiling, passing the potatoes, knowing you stole her future to pay for his failure? How do you sleep at night? And they never told me. Not one word. For 5 months, they looked me in the face and lied by omission. They would have never told me. I would have just gone to check that account one day, maybe when I was ready to buy a house, and found nothing, a zero, a void where my future was supposed to be. They only let it slip because they got greedy. They didn't just steal from me, they stole from me, covered it up. And then, with a smile on their faces, in a room full of people, they tried to steal from me again. It wasn't just the theft, it was the double dip. It was the unbelievable, breathtaking audacity of it. They had already burned my future down to the ground to save my brother. And now they were back, sifting through the ashes, looking for anything left to salvage for his party. I wasn't their daughter. I was their emergency fund. I was the scapegoat ATM. Back in the dining room, after I'd asked what money, my mother, Janet, just flinched. She tried to laugh it off. "Oh, Izzy, honey, we'll talk about it later." She turned back to her guests. But I didn't sit down. I didn't move. I just stood there, my heart hammering a hole in my chest, until the party conversation awkwardly restarted around me. I watched her. After a minute, she excused herself, her hands full of empty bread plates, and fled to the kitchen. I followed her. The sound was the first thing that hit me. The blast of hot water, the clatter of plates being stacked too hard in the sink. It was loud, chaotic. She was making noise, trying to build a wall of sound between us. She had her back to me. She was scrubbing a plate that was already clean, scrubbing it like she was trying to rub the pattern off. I stood in the doorway for a second. "Mom." She didn't turn. "Not now, Isabel. We have guests." "What did you mean out there?" "It's not a big deal. We'll discuss it." "What money?" My voice was flat. "What family contribution?" She scrubbed harder. Her knuckles were white on the sponge. The water was steaming. Tell me, now. She finally stopped. She turned off the water. The sudden silence was worse. She let out a long, shaky sigh. She still wouldn't look at me. She just stared at the suds in the sink. We borrowed it. The word just hung in the air. Borrowed. What? The money. From your fund. She mumbled it. It was a family emergency. To help your brother. My blood didn't just run cold. It felt like it evaporated. Like I was suddenly hollow. A family emergency. Yes, she said, her voice getting a little stronger. He was in terrible trouble, Izzy. We didn't have a choice. I felt a strange, cold laugh bubble in my chest. How much? It was a lot. How much? She finally turned. Her eyes were red, pleading. She was already practicing her victim face. Isabel, you have to understand. How much, Mom? All of it. The floor, the walls, everything just tilted. You, all of it? The $50,000? We were going to pay it back, she insisted, her voice rising. We needed it now. Borrowed. They didn't borrow it, you asked to borrow. You stole from me, I whispered. Her face snapped from pleading to angry. Don't you dare use that word. You stole my money. It was a family emergency. It was my future. I was yelling now. You stole $50,000 from me. From me, not from him, from me. And that's when the kitchen door swung open. I couldn't breathe in that kitchen. The steam, the smell of soap, the look on my mother's face, that sudden, cold anger when I called her a thief. I felt sick. I pushed past her, shoving the kitchen door open. I didn't go back to the dining room. I couldn't. I stumbled into the dark, narrow hallway that led to the front door. It was quiet out here. The muffled laughter and chatter from the party sounded like it was happening in another house, a million miles away. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my phone. My fingers kept hitting the wrong digits on the keypad. Come on. I opened my banking app. The little blue circle spun. And spun. I clicked on the account, the one my grandparents had named Izzy, Future Fund. I knew what she'd said. I had heard the words, all of it. But there is a profound, sickening difference between hearing a confession and seeing the digital proof. Balance, $0. My vision tunneled. The walls of the hallway felt like they were shrinking, pressing the air out of my chest. 0.00. It wasn't just a number, it was a hole, a void. All those 3 a.m. coding sessions, fueled by caffeine and panic. All those weekends I skipped. All those, no, I can't come out. I have to study texts to my friends. All that sacrifice. All that discipline. All that time. Erased. Deleted in a single transaction. By a single keystroke. I leaned my head against the cool drywall, my phone clattering from my numb fingers onto the carpet. The floor didn't just drop out. It had never been there. I had been standing on thin air for 5 months. I don't know how long I stood there, just trying to pull oxygen into my lungs. Then I heard the kitchen door open again, then the dining room door. The light flooded the hallway, making me wince. My father was standing there. He didn't look worried. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. Isabel, he said, his voice low and stern. The one he used when I'd been a teenager. What is wrong with you? Your mother is in tears. You're upsetting everyone. I looked at him, completely bewildered. She told you? You knew? Of course I knew, he snapped. It was a family decision. You stole my money, I said. The words were flat, dead. He actually sighed. He let out this long-suffering, disappointed sigh. Why are you being so selfish? Selfish? The word echoed in the narrow hall. It felt like a slap. I was selfish? I was the selfish one? It's just money, he said, shaking his head as if I were a child. It's replaceable. Your brother's life was in danger. We did what we had to do. His voice had carried. Now Mark, my brother, was in the dining room doorway, drawn by the new commotion. His fiancée, Sarah, was right behind him, her eyes wide. What's going on? Mark demanded. I couldn't even look at him. I just stared at my father. You stole $50,000 from me, and you're calling me selfish? The number. That's what did it. As soon as I said $50,000, Sarah's face crumpled. Right on cue. She burst into these loud, dramatic, gulping sobs. Oh, Mark, she's trying to ruin everything. She's ruining our engagement. That's all Mark needed. He puffed up immediately, stepping in front of his crying fiancée. He was the protector. He was the victim. He pointed a finger straight at my chest. You! He shouted, his face turning red. You've always been jealous of me. You're ruining my wedding. I just looked at them, all of them. My mother, the thief, hiding in the kitchen. My father, the enabler, calling me selfish. His fiancée, the actress, performing her grief. And my brother, the black hole, the man-child who had just been saved from loan sharks by my money. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't on his knees, thanking me. He was accusing me. They were all looking at me like I was the villain. They commit grand theft. And I am ruining his party. I didn't say another word. I just looked at the three of them, my father's anger, my brother's entitlement, his fiancée's fake tears. This was a performance. And I was done playing my part. I bent down, scooped my phone off the carpet, and pushed past my father. I didn't run. I walked. I walked out of the hallway, grabbed my keys from the bowl by the door, and I left. I didn't slam the door. I closed it, very, very quietly. The click of the latch was the only sound. The cool night air hit my face, and it felt like my first real breath in hours. I got into my old car, my sanctuary, the one I paid for, the one I maintained. I sat there for a full minute, in the dark, in the silence, just gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. The whole thing felt unreal, like a scene from a nightmare. The laughing, the toast, my mother's smiling face. Lin Meiyuan, you're being so selfish. You're ruining my wedding. I just couldn't process the audacity, the sheer, blinding gall of it. I put the key in the ignition, and just as the engine turned over, my phone lit up the dark cabin. A text, from my mother. I glanced at it. You embarrassed us all. You need to come back inside and apologize to your brother. I put the car in reverse. B. My phone buzzed again. My father. I am incredibly disappointed in your behavior tonight. You've made a scene over nothing. Over nothing. Wen Meiyuan. I pulled out of the driveway, the headlights sweeping across their perfect, dark house. B. My mother again. Mark is devastated. His fiancée is hysterical. This was supposed to be his night, Isabel. You ruined it. I just drove. My phone was a constant, vibrating rectangle of hate on the passenger seat. B. The texts just kept coming. A barrage of guilt, a storm of accusations. You embarrassed us. You need to make this right. How could you be so cruel? Your brother is heartbroken. I pulled over into a gas station, the bright fluorescent lights making everything feel harsh and sterile. I just stared at the phone as it buzzed and lit up, over and over. I scrolled through the messages. My thumbs were shaking, not with fear, with a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. Not one of them said we're sorry. Not one of them said we'll repay you. Not one of them even mentioned the $50,000. It was like it didn't exist, like I had been the one to commit some terrible crime by noticing it was gone. They hadn't just stolen my money. They were trying to gaslight me into thinking I had no right to be upset. They really, truly, believed I was the problem. That's when I knew. This couldn't be a screaming match. This couldn't be a family fight. This was something else. This was a legal matter. I was a developer. I'm a logical person. I deal in facts. I opened a new text message. I sent it to all three of them. My mother, my father, and my brother. My fingers were perfectly steady now. We have nothing to discuss until you repay the $50,000 you stole. I hit send. Boundary set. I turned the ringer off and threw the phone back on the seat. It didn't even take 30 seconds. The screen lit up. Not a text. A call. My brother, Mark. I stared at it. What could he possibly have to say? An apology? A plan to repay me? I picked it up. I hit accept. I didn't say anything. You. His voice wasn't apologetic. It wasn't begging. It was shaking. With pure, unadulterated rage. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? He spat. Sitting on all your money while I'm out here struggling. You just couldn't stand to see me happy. Mark, I said, my voice low. You're delusional. You stole my... He cut me off. You're not getting a dime back. You hear me? You owe me this. After everything Mom and Dad have done for you. Done for me? They paid for you. They paid off your loan sharks with my money. It was a family emergency, he screamed. It was theft, I screamed back. There was a second of silence. Just his sharp, ragged breathing on the line. Then he said the one thing that changed everything. You're just a spiteful bitch. He hung up. I sat there in the harsh, sterile light of the gas station. The call was over. The line was dead. But the words just hung in the air of my car. You're just a spiteful bitch. Click. That was it. That was the sound of the last, final, frayed thread of family obligations snapping. It wasn't a snap, really. It was a click. The sound of a lock, cold and heavy, sliding into place. The fog, the thick, suffocating fog of guilt and responsibility and but we're family that had choked me my entire life. It just evaporated. It was gone. In its place was a terrible, sharp, crystal clarity. I could suddenly see them, not as my family, not as Mom and Dad and Mark. I saw them as they were. My mother, the thief. My father, the enabler. My brother, the black hole. They weren't a family. They were a three-person cult, and I was their unwilling sacrifice. They didn't just take my future. They took it, they gave it to him, and then they had the audacity to be angry at me for noticing. They were angry because I wouldn't let them steal more. They were angry because the ATM was finally flashing insufficient funds. Ling Meiyun. Spiteful bitch. Okay, fine. I picked up my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly still. I didn't call them back. I scrolled through my contacts, past Mom, past Dad, past Mark. I pressed call on my grandparents' number. They picked up on the third ring, my grandmother's voice, warm and sleepy. Isabel? Honey, is everything all right? It's late. No, Grandma, everything is not all right. And I told them. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just reported the facts. My voice was low and cold and precise. I told them about the $50,000. I told them about the craft beer truck and the loan sharks. I told them about the engagement dinner, about my mother's smiling announcement. I told them about the kitchen confrontation, and my father calling me selfish, and Mark screaming that I was ruining his wedding. I told them about the $0 balance in the account they had set up for me. And then, I told them my brother's final words, "You're just a spiteful bitch." When I finished, there was a silence. It wasn't a sleepy silence. It was a cold, heavy, dangerous silence. I just waited. Then I heard my grandmother's voice. And it wasn't warm anymore. It was sharp as glass. He said, "What?" I heard my grandfather in the background. A muffled, furious sound. They did what with her money? My grandmother came back on the line. "Isabel," she said, and her voice was a razor. "You listen to me. You are not to speak to them again. Do you understand me? We are beyond furious." It wasn't just validation. It was an alliance. It was a declaration of war. "We will handle this," she said. "We are so sorry, honey. We are so proud of you. You did nothing wrong. They did this." I finally let out the breath I felt like I'd been holding for 5 months. "I know," I said. "Thank you." I hung up. I opened my text messages. One last time. I typed one final message to the group chat with my mother, my father, and my brother. "I have just spoken to Grandma and Grandpa. They know everything. The theft, the loan sharks, the wedding, all of it. I am cutting off all contact. Do not try to reach me." I paused, my thumb hovering. I added one more line. "My next call is to a lawyer to discuss my legal options." Send. Then, one by one, I blocked them. Block, Mark. Block, Mom. Block, Dad. The screen was clean. I put the car in gear and drove home, in the quiet, empty streets, feeling nothing at all. The fallout was nuclear. The next morning, my phone was silent. No blocked numbers tried to get through. No new numbers appeared. Just quiet. But the bomb had detonated. My grandparents, my true allies, did exactly what they said they would. They handled it. My aunt called me later that day. Her voice was hushed. "Izzy," she said, "what on earth did you do? Your grandparents called your parents." I've never heard my father shout like that. He unleashed on them. Apparently, my grandparents didn't just handle it. They convened a full family intervention, minus me. They laid out the facts, cold and hard. The $50,000 theft, the $30,000 failed beer truck, the loan sharks, the wedding ambush, and finally, the text messages, culminating in spiteful bitch. My parents were completely and totally isolated. The family was split right down the middle, and my parents were on the losing side. Their reputation as the stable head of the family? Gone. Their image, which they had stolen $50,000 to protect, evaporated. They were exposed, to their siblings and their own parents, as thieves who had sacrificed their responsible daughter to save their failed son. There was no more hiding. There was nowhere to run. They were left to answer for the theft, for the lies, and for the unbelievable arrogance of it all. And my brother Mark? His high-end wedding? The one I was supposed to pay for after they'd already stolen from me? It's off. Of course it's off. The family contribution was gone. My grandparents certainly weren't paying for it. And my parents. My parents had just been financially and socially disowned. They have no one to borrow from now. The Bank of Izzy is permanently closed. The golden child's bubble didn't just burst, it was obliterated. He's 28 years old, with no money, no business, no high-end venue, and a mountain of debt that is, for the first time in his life, entirely his problem. That night, I was in my own apartment. My apartment. The one I pay for with the job I earned. It was so quiet. Not the bad, tense quiet of my parents' house. It was a good quiet. A clean, empty, peaceful quiet. I made a cup of tea. I sat at my desk, the glow of my monitor the only light in the room. I opened my laptop. The click of the keys was the only sound. I didn't go to my old bank. I opened a new tab. I went to a completely different, new, online bank, one my parents had never heard of. I opened a new, high-yield savings account. I filled in my information. Isabel. 25. Software developer. I set up two-factor authentication. I set up a password they could never guess. I transferred my last paycheck into it. The starting balance was small. It was nothing compared to the $50,000 I'd lost. But I just stared at the number. It was mine. In an account with my name on it, my name, and my name only. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders, which had been locked up by my ears, finally, drop. I wasn't just starting over. I was secure. This was my new foundation, and this time, it was built on bedrock, not on the thin ice of my family's lies. A week later, a card showed up in my mailbox. It was from my grandparents. Inside, there was a check. It wasn't $50,000. It wasn't even close. But it was substantial. Underneath it, my grandmother had written a note. "For your real future. We are so proud of you. We love you. This is family. This is what it's supposed to feel like. It's not guilt. It's not obligation. It's not a one-way street where I am just a resource to be drained. It's support. It's respect. It's pride. It's a found family. And sometimes, you find it right where it was supposed to be all along. My parents. My mother. My father. My brother. They didn't just steal $50,000. That money. Money is replaceable. I'm a good developer. I'll make it again. What they stole was my trust. They stole my past. They stole the very idea of home. But in the end, they gave me the most incredible gift. They gave me my freedom. They freed me from a lifetime of being the responsible one. They freed me from the crushing obligation to be their emotional and financial shock absorber. I learned that family is not a blank check. It is not a blood debt. It is not an excuse to enable, to steal, or to abuse. Family is a bond you choose to maintain. It's a two-way street, built on trust and mutual respect. And when that trust is broken, you are free to walk away. They chose a failed beer truck and a spoiled man-child over their daughter. And I choose me. If you have ever had to break free from a toxic family dynamic just to save yourself, you are not selfish, you are a survivor, and you are not alone. Hit that subscribe button and let's talk about it.